Afro gain so much traction? Afros have been on the heads of a few black people, mainly artists, trendsetters, and intellectuals, as early as the 1950s, with dancers like Katherine Dunham, Ruth Beckford, and Pearl Primus rocking them, as well as the rhythm and blues singer Odetta. Every year from 1962 to 1972, on August 17th, Marcus Garvey Day, the Grandassa Naturally show featured black women, all with natural hair and, even more importantly, dark skin. There was lots of controversy because we were protesting how, in Ebony magazine, you couldn't find an ebony girl, said Kwame Braithwaite, the creator, a first-generation Barbados-American photojournalist and activist who formalized black as beautiful and helped destroy the term Negro. Initially, to many, wearing a natural meant making a conscious choice to make a political statement. But an afro was not necessarily seen as a natural hairstyle from the motherland by everyone, with the 1970 article quoting an annoyed Tanzanian government-owned newspaper editor who was upset that young African girls were sporting the hairstyle because it comes from Black America. Angela Davis's article about the watering down of the afro mentions her discomfort with a March Vibe magazine issue dressing up actress Sidna Williams as her. She wrote, particularly unsettled by Williams recreating her widely publicized FBI wanted poster that made the afro go viral. My legal case is emptied of all content so that it can serve as a commodified backdrop for advertising. Further bristling her brush was the fact that the New York Times had just listed her as one of the 50 top hairstyle trendsetters of the 20th century. But the afro had been commodified and, in a sense, watered down long before the 90s. In 1966, the conservative 11,000 student Howard University crowned its first natural-haired homecoming queen. And 2 years later, the Hilltop newspaper asked its student body if the afro, or the natural, was faddish. An estimated 300 of the 11,000 students were rocking naturals, and one girl said she'd feel like a hypocrite if she didn't wear one, and another one said it was easier than setting it and sitting under a dryer. So for her, it was about convenience and not a political statement. Wrote Assata Shakur, "You can be a revolutionary thinking person and have your hair fried up, and you can have an afro and be a traitor to black people." The self-proclaimed Bush doctor, aka Nathaniel Mathis, began giving people chemically induced afros in 1969. While the afro gained greater prominence than ever before, the vast majority of black women never wore naturals as a political statement or identified with radical politics, with Afro-American historian William L. Vandenberg estimating 10% of black Americans supported political separatism and/or the Black Panthers during this period. The afro continued to evolve past its history as a plantation-era necessity, past the 1950s era artist trend, past its brief moment as a political statement, and fully into a style statement into the 1970s, especially in the heady discos and blaxploitation films of the decade. One of the most famous afros of the period was not on the heads of revolutionary leaders, most of them now dead, in exile, or tucked away on college campuses, but on the celebrity and sex symbol Pam Grier, who infamously pulled a gun from her afro in Foxy Brown. In the caricature of blaxploitation films and the rising fashion and beauty industry, afros were definitely no longer representative of black radical power. In 1970, Beauty Trade magazine hosted a natural competition hair show so that barbers and stylists could show all of the ways natural hair could be manipulated. The winning look was the sculpted afro with the widow's peak on the bottom left. Clearly, the natural was no longer so natural. An industry popped up as early as 1969 to provide maintenance for the once radical hairstyle, from glossy picks to afro sheen and blowout kits. Those last two were big moneymakers for the black-owned Johnson Products Company.
She is black essence, and her beautiful natural hair is her crowning glory.
JPC began sponsoring Soul Train in 1971, where big and blown-out afros could be seen bouncing to the hottest music. JPC would be moving $40 million in product by 1976. There were also, of course, afro wigs, which Beauty Trade magazine encouraged stylists to sell alongside hair processing services so that women could have more choices and so that they still keep spending money on their hair underneath the wigs.